Today's NFL Daily, complete with the latest rumors and news, is made powered by Magic Spoon. This is the best blend, folks, of the healthy and tastiness that you come to expect from good cereal. If you're like me, you kind of stopped eating it because the healthy stuff, it didn't taste good. Tasty stuff was bad for you. Not an issue with Magic Spoon. We'll tell you more about them later on in today's video. Let's hit some news, though, beginning with Richard Sherman, who has found his next NFL team. He has picked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and for where the NFL cycle is at in terms of the offseason, regular season, a pretty good deal here for Sherman. A one-year, $2.25 million contract. He gets $500,000 guaranteed. Now, Tampa right now is banged up. They've got multiple injuries at the cornerback spot, as we'll dive into. Sherman says he needs at least a week of practice, so I don't think he's going to be out there in week 4. Become week 5, week 6. I think that makes some more sense. Now, Sherman last year, according to Pro Football Reference, their coverage stats here, wasn't great, and not the guy we've come to expect. I think it is very fair to wonder how much exactly Sherman's got left in the tank given the injury he had last year and the much discussed, mental health stuff he went through and the arrest he went through earlier this offseason. The Bucs, though, are in need of corner help. Carlton Davis is still a promising player, but Jamel Dean and Sean Murphy-Bunting both hurt. They're relying on Ross Cockrell and Dee Delaney to play big minutes for them, or snaps for them at corner. In general, that's not something NFL teams like to do. Those are not the type of corners they want. Brady helped convince Sherman to come, at least so says Richard Sherman. He mentioned the Panthers had interest. They traded for C.J. Henderson. Seattle, San Francisco had varying degrees of interest as well. In the end, though, Sherman picks Tampa. And I get it. That's a pretty decent spot to go if you're trying to win one more ring and rehab your stock for next year in NFL free agency. So I want you guys now to grade this particular signing. We know the contract details, you know the age, the off-field stuff. We know enough here to actually really grade this on first reaction. So get your votes in for me in the comment section. Type in A, B, C, D, or F right now in the comments. Let's talk Dak Prescott now, because Jerry Jones has made this comment. Brett Favre made it as well if you watch the Manning cast on ESPN2. Undisputed with the talking head clowns of Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp mentioned this too. So that the Dak is playing better than he was pre-injury. I think we've had a different Dak Prescott after the injury the gruesome one he suffered last season. The offense has changed in part because that's a little bit better of an offensive line, but so far, I think anyone who's watched Dak Prescott play has come away with this guy has complete command of an NFL field right now. I don't think there are very many players who are operating from a pre-snap perspective in the way that Dak Prescott are, and I think that list begins and might even end with Tom Brady. Dak has never had the greatest arm in the world. The running ability is not what it was pre-injury. Hasn't really mattered. The number of times you watch Dak pre-snap get everything set up, it's very clear that Dak Prescott is now an elite pre-snap football player. That growth has been massive for him from when he began his time in the NFL to where he is right now. He really is a pocket passer. So I think in terms of a pre-snap perspective and like the end result on the field, there's a decent argument to be made there. It helps, I think, that the games aren't quite as much having to rally from down 21 points in the third and fourth quarter like it was last year. But I think that the eye test, which people have often had issues with for Dak Prescott, different conversation, does show that Dak Prescott is a much better quarterback pre-snap this year, and we saw those flashes last year. He and Kellen Moore, that combo, quarterback OC, clicking on a very high level. Now, if you want some elite stuff, go get Magic Spoon as well. This cereal is the best stuff for you to eat in the morning. High in protein is Magic Spoon, 13 or 14 grams in every bowl. It's also low in carbs, only 4 to help keep down those, extra pounds you may or may not have gained during COVID times like I certainly did. But I'm actually down 10 pounds since I started with Magic Spoon because this stuff, despite having 0 sugar, is incredible. I'd stopped eating breakfast, or at least most breakfast, because I want to eat stuff that tastes good. I don't want to eat stuff that tastes bad. So I was eating either nothing or unhealthy stuff. But Magic Spoon is tasty and healthy. So get $5 off your first order today when you go to magicspoon.com/chat. Let's talk trade rumors now. Some interesting ones that are popping up around the NFL. Saquon Barkley to the Niners, which, weird. Let's break it down. So the SB Nation site mentioned in a podcast, they're like, well, what if you call the Giants about a Saquon trade? And on one hand, I get like what's going through their heads. Like, okay, the Giants are bad. They're struggling. The 49ers are hurt at the running back position right now. But I think the Giants would probably have a bit too high of an asking price for what they invested in Barkley. Dave Gettleman's still in charge after all. For what the Niners be prepared to give up. And oh, by the way, I don't think the Giants are really in a sell mode right now. Even though Barkley hasn't been 100%, I don't think this is a team that can afford to trade one of their top backs, as we'll get into more in depth. So, knowing NFL trades are much more rare than NBA trades, what is the percent chance that the Giants trade away Saquon Barkley? I say it's like 2%. I don't think it's very high, but I want to hear from you guys. Get your votes in the comments section. If I had to use one word, I'd be shook if the Giants dealt away Saquon Barkley. He's getting more and more of the reps as the year has gone on, and he's a big part of what they want to do on offense. Beyond that, the Giants and their coaching staff and their regime right now, they need to win games. Trading away Saquon Barkley for what would amount to picks might be better for them in the long run, but it doesn't help their current regime. You trade away Saquon Barkley, I think Dave Gettleman's gone. They might clean house, even including Joe Judge. So the decision makers in their own vested interest aren't going to want to trade away Saquon right now. He's still been stuck behind a bad offensive line, but imagine if it was Gary Brightwell back there as lead back. Great way to tank if you're the Giants, but the regime, the people in charge, they don't want to tank. That's why I doubt a deal goes down. More trade rumors here. How about the Houston Texans trading away Brandin Cooks? Now, this was pitched by FanSided, the Broncos side, which I'm fine with here, because I think it makes at least some sense for Houston, too. The Texans very clearly are a rebuilding team. You look at their roster, this is not a team built to win, even if in a maybe not great AFC South. It's going to be a process. The question is, does Brandin Cooks fit in that timeline for their rebuild? Definitely fits in Denver. They're 3-0, and they appear to be in win-now mode. I think of the Texans players who are potentially obtainable, I think Brandin Cooks, like if you build it like a trade big board for Houston, Brandin Cooks, I think would be number one on that list. Because he's still young, he's a relatively affordable contract for Houston, and he is producing regardless of how and who the Texans have at quarterback. Through 3 games, 32 targets, 23 catches, 322 yards, and 1 score. The reason why Denver could make some sense, well, they're decimated by injury. K.J. Hamler is done for the year. Judy's going to miss some time. Here's the issue I have with the Denver side of it. Judy will come back. When Judy comes back, you've got him, Sutton, and Tim Patrick. That's actually a pretty darn good trio at wide receiver. K.J. Hamler comes back next year. Now what are you doing with Brandin Cooks? That makes it a little bit dicey for me. Then for Houston's side, he's their good receiver. And I didn't say one of, I said they're good receiver. Like, there's Chris Conley, journeyman, Danny Amendola, old journeyman guy, Andre Roberts, special teamer, Anthony Miller, young, but like not good yet. Nico Collins is now on IR. So if Houston trades away Brandin Cooks, like there's nobody at wide receiver who I think really would strike any semblance of fear, frankly, on that entire offense if they were to get rid of Cooks. And despite that, look how productive he's been this year. So with all that in mind, should the Texans trade away Brandin Cooks? I'm about to give my thoughts here, my answer. Get your votes in. Why for yes and for no? I do think it makes some sense, and I think Houston should listen on trade offers for Cooks. but he's 28 years old. He's already been dealt 3 times, by the way. So even though Houston could maybe get a second-round pick back, I doubt a team moves a first-rounder for him again. But even if you get a second-round pick, he's under contract next year. If I'm Houston, I'm holding on to Brandin Cooks and giving him 2 Davis Mills to see if Mills can be a franchise quarterback. I think the extra, we'll call it half year, of Brandin Cooks is enough that the Texans will be best served keeping him on their roster for 2021. Let's talk some major injury news now around the Tennessee Titans, focusing in to start on Julio Jones. Jones is dealing with some type of leg injury, and his Week 4 status is now uncertain because there's always some type of injury for Julio Jones. It's the hammy, it's the knee, it's the ankle, it's the shoulder, it's the arm, it's the chest. There's always something. I'm pretty sure, and I've got no real data to back this up, but I'm pretty sure Julio Jones has spent more time in his NFL career on the injury report in some capacity, even if he plays, than off it. There's just always a bump and a bruise or something. So far, he's been inconsistent. He wasn't great in Week 1. He was great in Week 2. Not so good in Week 3 for the Tennessee Titans. 18 targets, 12 catches, 204 yards, 0 scores, but you know that's going to change at some point. He's still on pace for an over 1,000-yard season, but the game-in, game-out consistency hasn't quite been there at this point. I'd say this, Titans fans, welcome into the Julio Jones experience. Fantasy owners have known this for years. He's always on that injured list. Because of that, even though he missed a lot of time last year, it feels to me like, he'll find a way to be out there. He's Julio Jones. Even as he ages, he still finds ways to be productive and battle through whatever bump and bruise he's got. So, because of the other injuries still going on at wide receiver, as a gambling man, I think Julio Jones will be out there in Week 4. I might very well be wrong on that. There's a real chance that we've seen the best of Julio Jones, and now we're in the back 9, if you will, of his career. So what do you guys think? Will Julio Jones play this week for the Tennessee Titans? Get your votes in for me in the comment section. Type in P for he'll play, much to the delight of his fantasy owners, or type in O for no. He's going to be out in this one. Now, I think the one big thing the Titans could benefit from this week in Week 4 is that they're playing the Jets. They probably don't need Julio Jones out there to be able to win that game. So that's the one thing that maybe Tennessee plays it a little bit cautious in terms of having Julio out there for Week 4. Let's go to the other Tennessee Titans receiver now. A.J. Brown is probably going to miss some time, and he's dealing with a hamstring injury. NFL Network says he'll likely miss at least 1 game, maybe 2. We'll see on that front. And now with Julio Jones dealing with some injuries, all of a sudden that Tennessee Titans receiver room looking a little bit thin. And remember, A.J. Brown missed a lot of the preseason and offseason because he had double knee surgery and then had that flare up again on him with one of the knees back in the preseason. And I wonder if that's leading to some more soft tissue injuries. A.J. Brown hasn't been the same guy, if we're being honest here. So far, 19 targets, 7 receptions. That's a terrible ratio for a receiver. That's like low usage, high reward, high risk, like deep shot. Not like A.J. Brown being a number 1 receiver. The drops have been an issue so far. He just doesn't quite look 100% out there. And maybe it's the injuries. Maybe he's just a little bit off to begin the year. Whatever the reason, I don't think A.J. Brown is going to play in Week 4 against the New York Jets. Not the end of the world, but that is at least a little bit significant for Tennessee. So what is your concern level here with the A.J. Brown injury? Get your votes in for me on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being you're not worried at all, Tom. He's fine. It's just a little hammy. He'll be back and balling out soon. 10 being you're in full-on meltdown mode. You're a tilting fantasy owner. Get your votes in for me in the comments section. Now, if A.J. Brown and or Julio Jones are out Week 4 against the Jets, This receiving room looks very, very different. Chester Rogers and Cameron Batson actually got the nod last week over in an active Josh Reynolds, who at one point was set to be wide receiver 2 for this team. Kind of crazy. Racey McMath offers some size and speed, was more of a special teams guy. The, I guess, top outside receiver, if both those guys miss, is Nick WESTBROOK-IKHINE. And if you know who that is, I understand, like he's not a household name. Elite production, though, 69 yards and a touchdown. That's nice. I call him NWI because I think that's a fun nickname for him. He would be the next man up if Julio and or A.J. Brown are unable to go in Week 4 against the Jets. So he's been a nice little surprise for Tennessee. Maybe Dez Fitzpatrick becomes a practice squad call-up guy. I might be asking for too much there, but we'll see with Tennessee's injuries in Week 4.